Hello, and welcome to the Chapter 4 Nonverbal Communications lecture. Again, this lecture is supplemental with actually reading the text and making sure that you're note-taking there. We will highlight a few things that are either in the book that we want to make sure that you know, or a few things that are going to be on your exam that might not be in your book. So first, nonverbal communication, also known as body language, a couple numbers and a statistic that you will need to know. 80% of our communication is nonverbal, and there are over 700,000 ways to say something nonverbally. Lastly, we tend to listen to nonverbals more than verbals. What is your body saying when you talk? Just as with our last chapter, we learned about the difference between positive and negative feedback, not being happy or sad, but rather whether they met the intended message. There's also positive or negative body language, and this is, again, not a question of happy or sad, but a question whether it mirrors what was actually intended and what was being said. So positive body language just means that the body language is in fact mirroring what was said, for example, in the top left-hand corner. Or when body language does not mirror what's being said and they're inconsistent, then that's negative body language, such as the cinematic epic Mean Girls in the bottom right-hand corner. The face is also parts of your body in which nonverbal communication occur. The four that we talk about here are eyes, forehead, mouth, and nose. There are 6 universal emotions. Your book highlights a few of them, but for your entire list here, you will need to know a few of those on your test. Again, those are happiness, sadness, anger, fear, surprise, and disgust. The next section is voice. This is also something that is misunderstood at times, specifically because we think of voice as being language, but it's not actually what you're saying, but it's the way in which the qualities that you're utilizing can accentuate or detract, for that matter, from what's being said. So the 4 qualities of the nonverbal aspects of your voice include pitch, so how high, how low, the volume, how loud or how soft, rate, how fast or how slow, and tone, so the connotation of how you say a word. Hand gestures. The handshake in your book does a good job of talking about this, but the origin story is coming in peace and having no weapons, and the bow would be another example of this formal greeting. How we use space can also be a nonverbal quality. Men and women use space differently in a nonverbal capacity. Generally speaking, men use more than women. There's also cultural differences in the way in which space can happen here, as well as what we learn about how space happens. One thing you need to pay attention to here is the idea of a high or a low context culture that has to do similarly to these spatial questions, as well as some things we're going to talk about here in a moment. And that's your essay question for this unit. So definitely look into high and low context cultures. Lastly, with space, we have the 4 different space groups. The first is intimate. This is 0 space to 18 inches. Personal, 2 feet to 4 feet. Social, 4 feet to 12 feet. And public, 12 feet plus. Touch, again, varies in country. For example, Asia would have little. The US would have moderate, and other Eastern European and Western European countries may have high. Affect request is when you're adding nonverbal touch to try to accentuate your meaning or care you have, to try to have a positive affirmation, in this case, a yes to a request. And touch can also be life supportive. Through the 1980s Johns Hopkins research that talks about how white blood cell counts in sick babies could actually go up when they were next to each other. That's something you could do some research on if you would like as well. Lastly, are you telling a lie? There's some things that happen when you lie non-verbally. It's either an increase of things that are not what you usually do, or a decrease of things that you do usually do. And this is because your mind is wrapped around the idea of having to lie, and that unnatural question of how it happens means that you're going to stop doing involuntary processes or increase involuntary processes. These could include increased facial touching, decrease of hand gestures, a stiff posture, or body shifting. So again, that is a very quick explanation of some things you want to highlight on your test. And yes, that was very fast. But again, you can stop, you can start, and you can always rewind and make sure you get all the information you need. Please make sure that you take notes over this and add it to your Chapter 4 green text notes before your assignment. Thank you.